Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen, aren't I? Um,
We see your speaker notes at the moment.
okay. Uh, uh, that? What do you see now?
That's right.
Yeah, you see the slides? Full
We see the
screen?
slides.
Yeah, full
Yes,
screen. Okay, all right. Awesome. Um, well, everyone, I'll start. Welcome to another Hackathon live prep Q&A session. Um, we've got a lot of good stuff to discuss on the call today. We've got Paz Barda from Intel, who's going to be talking about one of his projects. We're going to dive into that a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the hackathon solutions that have been proposed. We're going to talk through some of them, and I've thrown some ideas and discussions yesterday, which has caused a little bit of a conversation. So we'll probably, if we've got time, we'll dive into those as well. But just like every single session, I'm just going to very quickly, for those of us that are new to the hackathon, just want to spend the 6 seconds to make sure we're all level set. Why are you here? What are we talking about? What's going on? What's this thing in front of you? It's a TV screen. So what this is Carbon Hack. So Carbon Hack is a hackathon that we're running. We run it every year, although we did delay it from last year. Um, it's starting on March the 18th, so very shortly, in a week or so, we're going to start the hackathon. It finishes on the April the 8th. We have several hackathon. There's more sponsors as well now. I should mention that they're all on the website, hack.greensoftware.com, that foundation. It's all about measurement this time round, and it's all about measurement using the impact framework, measuring software emissions. You can hack or by yourself, or you can hack in teams to build the best plugins and enhancements to impact frameworks to just really help move the conversation forward with regards software measurement. We have a bunch of prizes. We have the best plugin prize. Impact Framework is just a high-level framework, and its power is through its plugins. So um, we have a prize for the best plugin for Impact Framework. Um, we also have a prize for best carbon, which is a type of plugin which emits an environmental impact that is something that's not carbon. So it can be water, it could be waste, it can be whatever you want it to be. But as long as it's an environmental impact that's not carbon, you can submit it to the Beyond Carbon Prize. We have best content, which is either some training material or anything really, a case study that uses impact framework that you write up, a training material impact framework, whatever it is, but best piece of written content about or using impact framework is what comes under best content. That's for those of us who perhaps have a non-technical background, or those of us who are technical who prefer writing. I love writing. We've got best contribution to the framework, which is we're now redefining as the best uh, a code solution which makes the impact framework easier to use or improves the developer experience. So that could be something that a developer experience or something that sits on top of it, underneath it, whatever it is. As long as you're making impact framework easier to use, that falls under now the best contribution prize category. We also have two other prize categories, one for under 18s. If your entire team is made up of under 18s, then you fall in the under 18s prize. If your entire team is made up of undergraduates, there's a separate prize there. You could win if you're an under 18-year-old who's also an undergraduate university and who wins the best plugin category, you could win all three prizes. Um, or if you're an under 18 whose other solution didn't actually make one of the main prize categories, you'll still win a prize. So that's kind of how these accessory prizes work. And if you're a sponsoring organization, you can still submit teams. We would just ask that the judge that represents your organization doesn't judge your solution. Um, yeah, if you're interested in sponsoring, I think our sponsorships are closed now, but yeah, I think we've capped it now at eight. But if not, sponsorship is 5,000. Now everybody's going to want to sponsor. Now that I've told them they can't, you actually can't sponsor the hackathon, unfortunately. No, if there is another space left, there is $5,000, and that gets you one seat on the jury logo. There's a panel in the prize award ceremony, and yeah, you get to influence a set of people who are working to measure software. And if that's something that you're working on, I think you should definitely sponsor this hackathon. Important dates. The hackathon now begins March. I can't move this out. When is it? March 18th. Ends April the 8th. Closing award ceremony on the what's happened to my screen? On April the 18th. So a lot of really useful dates there. If you're interested in sponsoring, gruntstuff.org/hack/sponsor form or carbonhack@greensoftware.foundation. We're also running some but workshops actually now. We're running some very, very, very tight 1 hour workshops on Impact Framework. So we're going to teach you how to use Impact Framework, how the command line works, its major concepts, and also how to write a plugin. So we're going to go through that with workshops that are running the coming Wednesday and the Wednesday afterwards. If you go to, where's the best place? I've forgotten now. Oh my God, what's the name of that website? Oh yeah, if.greensoftware.foundation, the docs landing page for Impact Framework, if.greensoftware.foundation. There you'll find the links to join one of those upcoming sessions. So in this session, we're just going to be talking more generally about the hackathon, but in those sessions, we're going to be, teaching you how very specifically to use Impact Framework and also effectively preparing you to actually write plugins and use Impact Framework for the hackathon and beyond. So that's some of the things. I'll share some of these links in the or if it's not already happened in thank you, Andre. Yeah, thank you for sharing the links. So if.greensoftware.foundation and sounds like Sachinand has some can't see the video. Shout out if you can't see the video. We're getting a question through saying somebody can't see the video. So if you can, that'd be nice to know. I think that's it from the hackathon concept. Should we let's chat to Paz? Chat to Paz? Oh, let's do an introduction. I keep on forgetting to give instructions. My name's Asim Hussain. I'm the executive director of the Green Software Foundation. Based in the UK. And I've been looking at the intersection of sustainability and software for quite a few years now. And let me go to Joseph.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Joseph Cook. I'm project manager and a developer for the Impact Framework. My background is in environmental science. I was a climate modeler. Found myself enjoying the development side more than the academic side, so found myself here. Over to you, Paz.
Paz, yeah.
Yeah, my turn, I guess. I'm Paz Balda. I work at Intel. I'm a contributor to the Impact Framework project, and also been working at Intel in green software for the past year now, working with Asim for the most part up until recently.
Yes, we were teammates. Very exciting. How should we start? Paz, do you want to so obviously your project idea is interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk through? Should we bring up on the screen as well? Actually, do you know what? While you're speaking, I'll bring up on the screen and then.
Yeah. And I'll provide the introduction, I guess. So for us, it's not an entirely new idea. It started off as a project that we worked on here at Intel. We wanted to tackle this very challenging and interesting problem of measuring the carbon emission of software. How do you measure? And what we came up with is a Python library. We called it the Intel Energy Estimator. And basically, you provide the Intel CPU that you're running your software workload on. You provide the the CPU utilization values that you measured while running this workload. Yeah, that's our idea right there. And you will get back the estimation of energy consumed by that particular Intel CPU when running your workload. And we kept it generic. We wanted it to be a Python library, so engineers can take it and build dashboards around it, put it as a plugin to the Impact framework. It's actually a plugin for the Impact framework. It's not publicly available, but we have actually used it internally to for internal customers here at Intel. What we're going to do for the hackathon is take this idea and make it extremely more generic. And in order to understand that, I think we should talk about power curves a bit and explain what's that. So the Intel Energy Estimator originally is the secret sauce or the functionality is based on power curves. Every microprocessor has its own power curve, which is a characteristic of the power that's being drawn by the processor at various levels of load, right? Imagine a lookup table or a curve that matches CPU utilization value in percentage to power consumption in watts. And so we took a bunch of those that we've curated here that were generated. It's not all that trivial to generate a power curve. And you would imagine that it would be easy to do it when you work at Intel, but we have experienced that that's not always the case. So we worked hard of curating some of those power curves, and then we built a Python library around those that allows you to measure or estimate the energy if you have an Intel CPU that we have the power curve for. And then it also allows you to simulate what would happen if you run the same workload on a different Intel processor. What would be the energy consumption there? And now what we want to do for the hackathon is to do two things that will make it more generic. First of all, we want to open source it. We want to make an open source estimator. And of course, it's not going to have the restricted part, which is the Intel power curve. That part is still restricted. But we want to provide a plugin that is more generic for the framework that will work with any power curve. It can be an NVIDIA processor. It can be an Intel one. It can be any other device out there that has a power curve. And how would you generate your own power curve? Right? It's as we just mentioned. It's not all that trivial. We will complement this plugin that we're going to build with a tool that will allow you to generate your own power curve. You run it on your machine, not as part of the Impact framework, but as its own tool, as its own script, and it will generate a power curve for you. Now, the benefit of that, besides being able to generate your own power curve, is that even if I have provided you with the power curve of the CPU that you're using, we've learned while working on the Intel Energy Estimator and when talking to Intel customers that wanted to use it to estimate the energy of their software on Intel machines, is that some of them are making modifications. Their CPU is not the generic. It's not exactly the generic one that Intel can provide the power curve for. They make their own modifications. There's an aging effect that also kind of shifts the curve. And the benefit of generating your own power curve is that you don't need to worry about these special features that are true for your machine, for your processor, but not for any other.
So Paz, let me dive in here, and that's kind of like, I think this is kind of an interesting point, because like what I'm sharing on my screen right now is a great solution. It's the Teeds curve. It's something that we used, and I've seen it used so many different places. It is this generic, that's one of the generic power curves that you're describing. It is saying that at that on average, they did a whole analysis that on average, it's and when you're idle, assume 12%, well, not utilization, but you assume a figure which is 12% of the total power output of that CPU will be output. At 10%, you're consuming 32%, at 50%, 75%, and at 100, it's 102%. And you use that with another figure called TDP to actually calculate the energy of a particular chip because different chips have different TDPs. What you're saying is that there's actually a lot more nuance to that. There's a lot more nuance. And so one of the things you're saying is that was for me was quite a surprise actually to find out that you can tune a chip. We always think about like optimizing software so it works better on hardware. You can tune a hardware so it works better with a piece of software. And so that's kind of one of the things you're describing, isn't it? So I could buy a chip from Intel, and then somebody else could buy a chip from Intel, tune it differently, and the power profile is different enough so that it won't be a like for like comparison. So that's one of the assumptions that's out there, isn't it? That was interesting. And another one that I remember was and I'm not too sure how this bodes well for the future of measuring, but you know, with the advent of like accelerators on chips, everything gets very confusing because if you've compiled, you can have two processes with the same name. One's compiled to use an accelerator and one isn't. And the one that's using the accelerator will have a different power profile than the one that isn't using the accelerator. It'll have a different like kind of energy throughput and a different thing. So I think that's kind of like what you're trying to address here is actually these generic ones. It's been all right up until this point, but there's now is nuance and there's going to be increasing nuance. So you all better generate your own power curves. That's basically
Exactly.
kind of yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, even when you described the table that we're seeing here on the screen, I think you've said the word average about like 6 to 7 times. It's all averaged out. It's very it's simplified, and I can see why would this data be out there, because sometimes you want it simplified, but when you're measuring the energy of your software on your machine, you wanted you don't want it aggregated, you don't want it averaged out. Another thing that you mentioned, that you have the same CPU, one is working with an accelerator and the other is not. So for our context, this conversation, these are two different processes. They may carry the same name as you mentioned, but for us, for measurement of energy, they're completely different processes because they have different curves. Another thing that we need to keep in mind, and that's a very important dimension of measurement in this context. I'm hardly the expert on that, but there are different benchmarks, right? For us, when we worked on the Intel Energy Estimator, I think most of the time we used the JSS. I think that's no, the SSJ, the server-side Java, which is kind of a generic benchmark for a server. But again, you're making an assumption and you're averaging out. If I can provide you with a tool that allows you to run to generate your own power curve and maybe have you run your own workload in the background and maybe have it work like toned down and then a little harder and then a little harder until it reaches a maximum load, then the power curve is even more fitted to your needs and your use case.
Because you mentioned like a job, so that's another thing that was interesting, because 100% of an AI workload, the truth is the curve that changes on the type of workload. So 100, if you thrashed a CPU to 100% with a Java workload, 100% utilization, the actual energy that will generate is actually different to if you took a CPU to 100% with an AI workload. with a node workload, these kind of workloads change. Because that's why a lot of these kind of benchmarks are like, this is a AI benchmark. This is a server-side JavaScript benchmark. This is a database benchmark, because the type of application you're running changes the power profile. So yes, I think that's where no, is that not correct?
So again, I'm hardly the expert on that. I wanted to bring my colleague on this show, but she's in the US, so I don't think she would have been able to make it. But I can tell you this from what I know, from the little that I know of this. If you had a single core on your machine, then 100% utilization is 100%, and it makes no difference whether it's a server-side Java or an AI workload, or maybe rendering a complex picture or whatever. But once you have multiple cores, then different workloads will occupy different cores differently. The work will be distributed, so to speak, across the cores differently. So in that aspect, 50% utilization for one workload is not similar to 50% for another. So bottom line is that I think you're correct. And from what I do know from working with this for a year, every time you think that you understand how the work is being distributed, and you think you get a good handle on it, it turns out to be far more complex than you can imagine. This is why power curves are tricky, and power measurement of CPUs it's a profession of its own.
Yeah. So describe again. So what you're proposing. Let me get back to. Oh.
Yeah.
How do I get back? Oh, here we go. Here we go. No. Yeah. So are you proposing both of those aspects to this project? Are you proposing both an energy, like a benchmarking tool, or just the ability, if you have power curves, to surface the information? Which way around is this? Or you don't know yet?
It's both. It's both,
okay,
actually.
It's both. Right. Yeah.
We're going to provide the plugin, which basically takes a power curve in the form of a CSV file, a lookup table, and can make the calculations. And it's not super tricky, but it's not trivial. You need to do all sorts of interpolations, and the simulation feature that I've just mentioned. It's a bit complex, but that's not all, because it's useless if you don't have the power curve. And so we're going to provide the second part, which will complement the first part by providing people with the ability to generate their own power curves. I don't think it's going to have all the benchmarks and be all that comprehensive, but it will be out there for you to be able, at least for the scope of the hackathon, to generate a power curve and then use it with the plugin.
Wonderful. I won't ask you to kind of reveal details about what you're going to do there, because you might be giving people too many. Well, it seems fairly reasonable. Yeah, I think that's obviously I'm biased, but I think that's I think that's yeah, I think this is where the frontier of this space is. There's not many people who will like truly grok and understand kind of what it is that you're doing. But I think this is where the conversation is going to move to. I think a lot of people, when I show them this, they reel back in shock and horror, and they're like, "Is that what you're doing?" And I'm like, "This everybody's using this, and it's either your choices right now are this or nothing." So this is what you use. So hopefully with what you're building, the choice will be like something, I think it'll be a little bit more complicated than this to use, but that or this if you don't have the time for something like that, or nothing. Because I think it's going to be good to kind of give people those choices and have that kind of complexity in the future. And also the way Impact Framework works, you can use something like this. And then if you put the effort in to create the power curves, you can just do a drop-in replacement with what you're going to build. And then your whole pipeline, the whole computation becomes more accurate end to end. And I think that's one of the things that excites me about Impact Framework, that one team can just work on one part of a pipeline. And because that data is used everywhere else, it just improves it for everybody else. It improves the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you think of it, it's sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
No, that's okay. Just following on from that thought, there's a question in the questions and answers that's somewhat related to this, and maybe I could just read this from Tom and read it out on his behalf. I'm wondering, since Intel and most ARM chips use a little big topology, would this curve, presumably the Teeds curve, or maybe your Intel curve, even apply to modern Intel and ARM chips? Do you have any insight on that?
Can you repeat that? I think I missed it.
Yeah, I'm personally not sure what a little big topology means, but maybe one of you does. It says, since Intel and most ARM chips use a little big topology, would this curve, presumably the Teeds curve, even apply to modern Intel and ARM chips?
I don't know what little big, but that's fine. There's most of my brain while Intel was being slowly exploded on a day-to-day basis as I talk to people who actually know how computers work. So I don't really know. I would say if he's talking about this one in front of us right now, as has said, this is averaged, so it's good enough.
I don't think you need to know a lot about CPU power consumption in order to intuitively assume that this is might be it's not totally wrong. It can't be totally wrong, but life are much more complicated than that. There are people who their whole career is and their day-to-day job is measuring power for all the products out there with Intel, and it can't all just be this bottom line. So this is good if you want to get average results. I'm not saying anything bad about this. I'm saying different CPUs have different power consumptions. So like different people. If you push 100 pounds and I push 100 pounds, we the workload is being handled differently. So CPUs are like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think CPUs are far more. So Tom, if you've got more information for us, you might have to educate us a little bit on what little big topology is. But yeah, I think that the approach of running a benchmark, capturing a observation, which is all that utilization is like, even the term utilization is like, you have to calculate what a utilization is for a chip. There's like a model even there to kind of figure out what is utilization for a chip. And all you're really building is kind of like a model, like a statistical model, which can kind of like somehow guesstimate what that energy is. But truly, the only real way of knowing is to put a power meter on the end of something and actually measure an application in real time. So that's kind of, I think, that even has lots of issues, because even that's actually lots of statistical models, but it's just a finer grain. Everything's just models all the way down. I don't think we've answered your question, Tom, but we've talked.
I think he's making a good job rephrasing it in the chat there. Let me read it out. Okay, let me rephrase. Does this model assume a CPU that has efficiency cores and performance cores, or is it built on a CPU model? So again, the model is based. That's the whole idea of what we're trying to do. The model is based on your CPU. You're the user. You're the one who's trying to estimate the energy being consumed by your CPU. So it could be a 5-year-old CPU. It could be something that you unboxed yesterday. It's yours. And by the time the hackathon is done, we're hoping that you will have a tool that will allow you to generate a power curve that is your model, that fits your CPU. And of course, you will have a plugin that can utilize this curve and estimate the energy.
I think specifically he's talking about because there's this thing with Intel chips. I think is it just Intel where they have E-cores and performance cores. So before every single core was the same, and now different cores will do different things. So Paz, I don't think we don't have. There's no data. There's no way to even capture that data of what currently of what an E-cores. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is a way of doing it if you're in Intel, but there's no current way in the open source ecosystem of kind of like capturing what the energy of an E-core is versus a P-core. So you just have to do the whole thing and average it out again. So I think that's kind of that's probably the answer to Tom. Thank you, Paz. I think that's thank you for joining. You can stay. It'll help us comment on some of these other things. You can judge some of these other things. Paz has been actually an active, very active contributor to the Impact Framework for a long time. So yeah, he knows it. He knows it well, and he's been working on it for a while. So thank you, Paz. So should we move on to oh shizzle. We were gonna sit and have a discussion, excuse me, on we have another project that's just been submitted. Yeah, so we have a couple of projects being submitted. Let's go through some of these. I've already responded to a couple of them. Here's an interesting one from Adam for a Kubernetes importer and visualization. So intend to build a metrics importer that will import metrics from the Kubernetes metrics server. And near real time, we to expose them to Prometheus metrics to be scraped by Prometheus and subsequently visualized by Grafana. This is a great idea. I think this is something that at least we've discussed, and I think even Paz we've discussed this. I think we've like this is a really good idea. I like this approach. My one piece of and they've already got a project team. Wow, they've got a full project team. Full project team, excellent. So my one piece of advice to Adam, I don't know if you're on the call, Adam. My one piece of advice is so Joseph, do we have information about the exhaust plugins? There's an example of a plugin. Is there some code I can point Adam to or something along those lines? Do we have anything?
Yeah, sure. Yeah? Let me grab you a link.
Grab me a link. So one of the things we've done with this kind of recent refactor is that you can actually now, and we need to document this a little bit more, you can actually now create plugins as well as you can have right now you can have plugins that exist in a pipeline and they help kind of like massage some observations all the way to impacts. And now you can have a plugin which once the whole graph has been computed and every single other pipeline plugin has been executed, you can pass that whole computed graph to what we call an exhaust plugin, and then that can do whatever it wants. So Paz just did something which export to CSV. You can actually write one that just publishes all out to Prometheus, and that's how I would do you know, I'm not going to respond. I'll respond later. Is there a way of putting, do you know what? I'm going to put my notes tool so I don't absolutely waste all of my time. No, I'm going to do it. We can do this. We can do this. We can type some comments in here. We've implemented a type of plugin which we call an exhaust plugin. Documents coming shortly, but this is some code that might be of use. Oh no, that's not it. What's this thing?
Just put a link in the chat.
Yeah, I've got it.
Just to give just a little nuance on this before you hit comment. We have not we have not actually merged the PR to make dynamic loading plugins into the exhaust function yet.
Right.
Narek is working on that literally as we speak.
Okay.
So probably by the end of the day or maybe tomorrow, we'll
Mm.
have that functionality. But right now, we just have our built-in exhaust functions to YAML, the CSV, and to the console.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
we're still a few hours away from having dynamically loaded exhaust plugins.
But should be there shortly. This is the approach I might suggest for publishing to Prometheus after the computation phase has completed. Let me just correct the spelling mistake. Computation, hit commit. That's how you handle life. Go on.
Can I comment on this one before we move on?
Yeah, sorry, go on, yeah.
I'm very curious how this will play out, because it's like if I'm trying to read between the lines, it's not just getting I'm not sure what metrics are referred to here. I'm guessing that some of those again would be CPU utilization, right? This is one of the things that you want, and I mean, if this is a Kubernetes importer with Prometheus, then I'm guessing that the Prometheus instance is the one that's like running within the Kubernetes cluster.
Oh,
So
right. Yeah.
so it's like it's a nuance, but it's not really a nuance. You will be able to estimate carbon emissions
Mm.
based on CPU utilization, but not of the physical hardware, but for the virtualized one, for the containers.
Mm.
And I think this is, I mean, if this one is implemented for the hackathon, I would want to use it, right?
Yeah.
This is something that, I mean, we've been talking about CPU and CPU energy estimation, and our idea only talks about the physical hardware, but everything is virtualized, right? Everything is in the
Yeah.
cloud. So I
Everything's
think this
containerized,
is a
yeah.
great idea, and I would love to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I think I'm imagining what this, hopefully, if this was implemented, because really you then want something that then runs Impact Framework regularly, so like a sidecar or some part of their infrastructure, which then reads from Metrics Exporter, takes CPU utilization, calculates energy and carbon, publishes it all out to Prometheus, and then does that kind of like every few minutes, and then you've got that vision. Then you've got carbon in a database which you can visualize alongside CPU, alongside everything else. That'll be very exciting. In fact, one other thing that might be useful to these guys is that we've got Electricity Maps has signed up as a community partner to the hackathon. We're going to get some details for it shortly, but they'll be providing free electricity map data to hackathon participants. So if you wanted to like enrich that, because to get from electricity to carbon, you have to know what grid emissions are, and that's what Electricity Maps provides. So that's something that you'll be getting for free closer to the hackathon. As we get closer to the hackathon, that's when we'll be opening up a lot of these extra benefits. So then they'll be able to use that as well to get the carbon emissions. So yeah. Oh, we're getting some questions through. Should we read them out? Hang on.
Yeah, I've been trying to stay on top of them, but they're coming through quite fast now.
Quite fast. Okay.
I was
Read
just
them out.
responding to Andre. How important is it that that the project is fully implemented during the hackathon? Do they need to be fully merged before the end of the hackathon, or would a proposal suffice?
So, we still have to like exactly get together. What we're going to be getting you is effectively a package. We'd want you to flesh out a deck, which is going to be a templatized deck. There should be code. I think theoretically you might not necessarily need the code, but you won't get scored as highly. And so rather than kind of say you have to have code, you don't have to have code, I'll just say, although I can't quite remember, there might be something in our rules which say you have to have actually submitted some code. So that takes priority. But really the better a solution that you can provide, the more likely it is for winning. Yeah. you know.
There's
I would
also a follow-on question from Andre. For the best content category, can we provide some insight on what we mean by best?
best of all the content, best of everything else that's been submitted in the content category. So if you actually let me just go here. So we've got a little bit here, and this does need a slight. It's on my to-do job for today. But if you go under prizes and judging, and this is unfortunately where I do need to update a little bit what the best content says. But if you go down to judging criteria, so for instance, beyond carbon, this is what you're going to be judged on. So these are the criteria you're going to be judged on. So you're going to be judged on overall impact, what potential impact this model have to broad a potential upside. That'll be a score of 1 to 5 that we're going to ask the judges. And again, you know, they're basically going to have to give a score of 1 to 5 for overall impact. They're going to give a score of 1 to 5 for educational value. Does the project help understand more about emissions and planetary boundaries? And the last one is synthesizing, you know, talking beyond carbon. How well does the model integrate and combine information from existing research, things like that. So that's kind of how each one will be judged. For best content, it does need a little bit of updating, so bear with us. Right now it's written in the context of if you're creating training. So if you're creating training, again, overall impact, clarity, problem solving, those are two other ones. But because we've now opened up best content to also include case studies, we just need to adjust these a little bit to be a bit clearer regarding how we will judge a case study. So a case study being, if you just used, let's say you're talking about proposal, that might be the best content category, might be the best one for that, where you actually try and use impact framework to measure the thing that you're looking to propose, and then just write up a case study. This is how I measured it. This is the impact. This is maybe what I would implement in impact framework, things like that. So just a written case study. The idea of it, though, for anything as best content, is someone learns. Someone learns from it, be it direct training, be it a case study. So if you're running a case study, then somebody else who's interested in measuring the same thing can then read your case study for how you measured the same thing, and then learn from that. So for instance, one of the projects that's being submitted for best content, they're just going to try to apply impact framework to measure an AI workload. And just write about it. Like, this is how I used impact framework. This was the test case. This is how I measured it. They're just writing up how they used impact framework to measure something, because that's like a learning expression that comes out at the end of it. So that's really how it goes. I do apologize. This was on my plate well last Friday to update, so I've been a bit delayed here, but I will update these criteria shortly, so it'll be more clear for best content and best contribution. Anything else, Joseph?
Yeah, we have one in the chat. This is from Dario, and he's saying he's already developed an MVP of his project as a plugin for VS Code called Green Code. Are they eligible to participate in the hackathon? I guess to generalize the question a little bit, is I've already started building something before the hackathon started. Can I submit it as a hackathon project?
I don't think we have anything in our rules. I'll double check whilst somebody else is speaking later, or maybe Jez, you can quickly double check our rules. I don't think we've particularly mentioned anything about so if you look, the best way to really figure out like what's allowed and what's not allowed, if you go to rules and terms, if you remember, this is in the wiki section, rules and terms, and just read it. I don't believe we have anything at all. The only thing we say is you have to have an MIT license, or if it's a content, it's got to be Creative Commons. Everything's got to be open source. Don't use reused. Yeah, as long as you here we just say it. As long as you declare it at submission, that's fine. Any submission containing plagiarized or reused code from outside the hackathon dates must be declared at submission. If not, this could result in disqualification. So as long as you're like open about it, that's okay. I mean, look, if you've got something you've done previously and you're adding impact framework to it to like impactify it, that makes complete sense. That's a valid submission. I'd struggle how anybody's going to submit something which is valid, because this is impact. If this is an impact framework hackathon, so I don't see how you could submit something which isn't using impact framework. So as long as that's kind of the main criteria. But yeah, if you want to build something, Dario, which impactifies or leverages impact framework, that would be, that would come under the best contribution category, I think. So yeah. Anything else?
There's something from Shrini.
Oh.
I don't think it's a question. I think it's a response to someone else's, but I'm just reading it on the fly. Shrini, maybe Shrini's on the call and he can speak for himself. But if not, I can read it out. Do you hear Shrini?
He can't speak, can he? He's not.
He can now.
Now we're forcing Shrini to be on the call now. I don't know whether he wanted to be on, but anyway, you're on the call now, Shrini. Or is he?
No, okay.
Yeah.
No worries.
So I think he was responding to Andre, wasn't he? So if you're building a library that has logging in it, and the logging framework is your own, you could potentially deploy your logging framework in a standalone server. The logging framework could either log the data into a database or file server, and then you could measure the carbon footprint of your logs. Versus, oh, I see. He's explaining to him how to measure the carbon impact of logging. Because I suppose that's what Andre. I suppose that's what if you want to measure the carbon impact of logging, you have to have a model or some way to justify that that's the carbon impact of logging. And what Srini's proposing, I believe, is a way of figuring out what that model is. Srini's network is bad. Got another question. Oh, yeah. From Minette. Can content be directed to... Oh, sorry? Yeah.
No, it's just
okay.
acknowledging that we have this question. Yeah.
Okay. Can content be directed to non-technical audiences, such as stakeholders who might need to understand the business value of the dev teams doing this in the product? Oh. So that's for the best content category, right? So I say that comes under education and training. If you're educating and teaching people, the use cases and value of impact framework, that would yeah, that would be. Let me read what the current criteria says. Hang on. Yeah, so overall impact. What is the potential of the content have on the broader sustainability movement? What things happen for this impact to occur? So if it's good content generally, and it'll have an overall positive impact, that it would score well on that. You're going to get measured on clarity, how well the content communicates complex concepts. So if you're trying to explain impact framework to a non-technical audience, that's probably going to mean a lot to you, because you're going to have to explain really complex concepts in a non-technical way. Problem solving. Yeah, so like you really want to like foster a problem solving mindset. So if you're speaking to a non-technical audience, again, that would be that help them figure out how they can use impact framework to solve a problem that they have. And you can look at that high level, you can look at that level. Like we talk a lot about impact framework from like a grassroots level up. Like we just spoke ages about like a CPU, like energy curve and all, the very low level. But you can use impact framework at any level, inside an organization. You can use it to look at a data center with the right models. You can use impact framework to actually measure the entire emissions of an organization if you are so inclined, and you could write enough of the plugins and you can get enough of the observations together. So you can use impact framework on many different levels. It is just an executable audit of emissions. It doesn't have to be for a single application. It can be for every single application in your portfolio. It could be for massive data centers. It could be at whatever level of whatever you want to pitch it. It could be at that level. It is just an executable audit of emissions. That's what it is. I think that was good questions today. So we've got quite a lot of questions through. Okay, cool. I think then I might then just quickly talk through two of the oh, so no, here we go. So this is an interesting one. I just will very quickly talk through this one I thought was interesting, which is yeah, from Telling Machine, which was Azure has a data studio. There's an Azure Data Studio. It's a database administration tool, and it can kind of like suck information about databases and kind of show you kind of metrics about your database. And they wanted to look at kind of how do they expose Impact Framework to this? Like, what are the ways Impact Framework can help there? And kind of what I responded was what I always say. Like what I always say, whenever you're thinking about kind of like how do I use Impact Framework? What can I do it for? How does it work? The first question is always, what observations can you gather? That's the very first question, because that means everything. If you're trying to measure like the logging thing, if you're trying to measure logging, the first question is, what observations can I gather about logging? That's the first thing, because all the Impact Framework is it takes an observation and turns it into an impact. So the first question is, what observations can you gather? So that's the first question from a database perspective. What observations can you gather about a database? And then it's like, how can I take those observations and turn them into impacts? Are there existing plugins I can use that can take me part of the way there? And I just need to develop one more to kind of fill the gap? Do I need to build a whole pipeline? But also, the things is kind of interesting. One of the things I think I'd love for people to take a look at is, databases are such a large part of developing software, but they're not they're not like, if you self-hosted a database, you'll have things like virtual machine, CPU name, CPU utilization, things like that. But most databases these days are managed databases. It's big business for loads of clouds. How do you take like a managed database where all you know is like gigabyte stored, gigabyte saved? That's an observation. How do you turn that into Carbon? Is like an interesting question to ask. And I think if someone's willing to take that problem, that'll open the door to helping a lot of people measure more of their software infrastructure. We're just focusing very much on virtual machines, which is very important, in containers, but a lot of what people use is managed services. I just want to make sure we get a time to talk about it, because I thought I was very excited about this. I think Sachinand's Sachi's on the call. I had a chat with him last week. I weighed in a little bit there. Yeah. So Xbox, can you measure an Xbox game with Impact Framework? I think the answer is yes. You can measure an Xbox game with Impact Framework. I think that'll be very exciting. I think I get asked about the gaming industry constantly, and there's a lot of interest, but there's very little that I know. I know there's certain organizations taking a look at it. I'm very excited about this. I think if you can tell me how many kind of how many grams of carbon per minute of Halo I'm using. Actually, the truth is I only play Nintendo Switch these days because I have a 5-year-old, so it's just Mario. So if you can tell me like how many carbon per minute of Mario, that probably would be more useful to me personally. I haven't played Halo for a while, but yeah. So this is I think gonna open up the whole gaming sector to this space as well. Yeah. Any thoughts from you two? Do you play games? You've all got kids, so don't. The answer's probably, you carry on. I don't want to.
The answer is no for me, I'm afraid. The last game I played, I think, was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. I think I was about 14.
Oh, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
Paz is like every night I'm like world champion on. You are, aren't you, Paz?
Yeah, every night in my dreams, I guess. My 6.5-year-old is in the same Nintendo Switch Mario phase your son is at, and I'm actually concerned about knowing the carbon emissions of Xbox gaming, because I don't think we're going to like what we're seeing.
Oh,
I'm
the
not sure
carbon, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, can you really, I mean, will you be gaming less? I mean, could you reduce your gaming time because of carbon emissions? That's a challenge.
Oh, well, be a good excuse to get my son to stop playing games. But I think the first step is
Yeah,
just knowing it. I always say the
yeah.
first step is just all we're trying to do with impact framework is just get to the truth, and then I don't even really have any opinions on what's next after that. It's like that's up to other people. Our job is to kind of get to the truth and then leave it
I
out.
think I know what after is that maybe gaming companies will find ways to make games more energy efficient and carbon efficient. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's the silver lining, I guess.
Well, I think there's also I've heard like conversations around, and I think I've heard this around AI, which I thought was very interesting, was when you're, so I think it's the same thing applied for gaming. Like when you're, I I heard it proposed. I don't think anybody actually has implemented this yet, but I heard it proposed that you can say when I want to train this AI, but this is the total amount of carbon I'm willing to emit to train this AI. Slow it down, pause it, stop it once it reaches that threshold. Um, and then that can take aware of kind of carbon aware stuff and doing it times when it's greener and things like that. That might be something interesting to apply in the gaming space, which is, look,
Yeah.
I personally put it on eco mode. I want it on eco mode right now. I'm only willing to spend this much carbon per minute playing the game, and I'm still going to play it, but maybe render the background a little less or something. I don't know how it works, but that might be an interesting direction.
Maybe don't play with the remote player. Just play it locally. Reduce
Yeah,
the carbon from network.
network.
Yeah.
Yeah, things like that. So I think
Once you
there's lots
apply
of
a budget to it, then yeah, it's feasible.
it's feasible. Yeah,
True.
yeah. Okay, so I think we've had quite a good solid conversation. Quite a few questions open and answered. Anything else?
There are a couple more last minute questions that have come in.
Well,
There's one here. Is there any model plugin available with the IF that helps to calculate an SCI score for app services that are deployed on an app service plan so we don't have the process info available to us? The answer to that is no, I'm afraid.
oh,
The
app
only
services
plugin that
is
we
a PaaS, is like it's like one of the things that's a managed service, I presume. It's been a while since I've been at Microsoft. Okay.
the only importer that we have in at the moment is for Azure virtual machines. But there are some project proposed for the hackathon to expand that quite dramatically. So it's possible that we'll cover that use case pretty soon. Or you could build it if you
Or
want
you
to
can
do
build
it.
it. Yeah. I mean, effectively, Sachin, and I'll say this, Sachin, I'll say the same thing. Like, what can you observe? What metrics do you get for app services? I'm gonna propose it. I'm gonna post a ticket shortly on discussions for how I would take a serverless observation, which is gigabyte seconds, and create what I call an adapter plugin. And if you can just get from gigabyte seconds and just figure out what the equivalent virtual machine and utilization is, then the rest of the plugins can take you the rest of the way. So you don't have to do the whole computation. So I'd say the same with app services. Figure out what metrics you can get. And if you can just, figure out what the equivalent virtual machine and utilization would be and output that, then you can kind of like very roughly estimate what that app services emissions are. That's what I call an adapter plugin, and I'll be posting a discussion topic about it shortly. There's another question.
There's a question, is there a URL to all the specifics of what has to be used or implemented in order to adhere the IF? This is a follow-on from an earlier question about what you meant by Impactify earlier, about Impactifying a pre-built project. and I responded to say that you were using it as a shorthand for integrate the IF to do your environmental impact measurement.
Sorry, I'm inventing terms as I go along. Yeah.
And the follow-up is, what does that mean exactly? Integrate the IF? Is it a protocol? Is it a bit of software?
I think the advice
is there a URL with any specifics?
I mean, if.greensoftware.foundation, that's the docs page, and then also there's free training which we're giving on Wednesdays now, this has just been about the hackathon. That will just be about impact frameworks. If you want to figure out what impact framework is, that's the session to join. So reminder everybody, if you go to hack.greensoftware.foundation, I mean, no shit. I said shit. I don't know what I'm trying to say. If you go to if.greensoftware.foundation, which is both the docs website, but that's also where you'll find, that's my wife's photo. That's also what you'll find links to the sessions that we're running on Impact Framework. So if you want to learn more about that, go there. All right, then we're at time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Paz, for joining. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everybody who asked great questions. Excited for all of your contributions to the Impact Framework and to the hackathon. Catch you all later.